everything you watch, read, or listen to is manipulating your energy. You're being lied to about the world you live in. You're being lied to about your history. You're being lied to about who you really are. Question everything. Have you been on the road?
Quite a bit. I just came back from Egypt and France, and I was filming, putting the finishing touches to the new documentary. So it's finally get to spend a month at home, which is very unusual for me. Although I do lie, I've been backwards and forwards to Gaia in Boulder a couple of times already, and I'm about to go there again. I think I'm just going to pitch a tent in Boulder, save myself a lot of money in airfares.
But tell me about the documentary. What's that about?
It's called Megalith. It's kind of a pride and joy of a project because I've always wanted to do a black and white film on megaliths, mostly because it shows off the power of the stone and how the stones are very individual, very characteristic, but they also share common sort of geometric shapes, which totally surprised me. They seem to be recurring no matter where you go around the world. So there's something about the way people shape the stone to convey a piece of information, and we don't know what these shapes mean. So that opens up a whole new level of investigation. But the most thing was to, sit down and look at the three main areas in the world which have the biggest concentrations of megaliths, by which I mean standing stones, dolmens, passage mounds, and find out if they share anything in common and why would these three particular areas, which is central Portugal, the northwest corner of France, and also northern Scotland, and what do they share in common? And the results were very, very surprising.
I'm not surprised. I'm trying to be. I'm like a mini version of you in a way. I'm trying to be you essentially. I'm doing some
Oh,
similar
don't do
things.
that.
No, no, I don't. I mean that in a endearing way, actually, because I didn't realize you were on a friend of mine named Rye Voss's show. He's got a great show called Codex of Curiosities, and as I was listening to you talk, I was like, I don't know why haven't heard you talking with regards to portals and all this other stuff and megaliths and consciousness, because I'm on that similar path. And in fact, I live in South Carolina, and I try to go out into the woods because here in the United States, I mean, you can go in your backyard and find some really interesting things.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience with stuff in the United States?
A little bit. I tend, oddly enough, I live in Maine, and I tend to go anywhere but the United States, unless it's New Mexico or Arizona, because I love the culture down there with the Hopi and the Navajo. We didn't build very much in North America, but now we begin to realize there are a few areas where people did build with stone. There are sites in South Carolina and Georgia. They're supposed to be the kind of an outlier of the Maya culture, and it's been heavily suppressed, by the way,
Yes.
because it undermines the credibility of the archaeological establishment, that they said no such things existed here, but they have been found in the woods, and they keep getting mistaken for these walls that were built by colonists, which is not what you find in Europe, by the way. These are very different structures. And up here in Maine, up in the woods, I found a postcard from 1890 which shows a big passage mounds, just like those you find in Brittany, literally across the way in terms of the water. And it has a double entrance, which is very rare for a passage mound. And the last we hear of it was that in the early 20th century, it was demolished, and they took the stones to create the ballast to create railroads and other forms of transportation. So that's vanished now. So it's when you see something like that up here, it's kind of exciting. And I know that there's a couple of places in Massachusetts as well, and one not far from me called America's Stonehenge. And I don't know why they keep using Stonehenge all the time because it bears no resemblance. And I haven't even been there yet, and I've been here for 20 years. So something hasn't pulled me there yet, but there are alignments there which are very similar to those in Europe that align certain parts of the site to certain astrological and astronomical connections. So there are traces of that, but by and large, the native people never built anything. Because the whole point was that they could sense the landscape, just like they do in Australia with the Aboriginal cultures. So they didn't feel the need to build anything. They could see where these energy are and stand on them and have these shamanic moments. So when you see something in America, it definitely is worth meriting.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was telling you, trying to be like you a little bit, but I was already doing this last summer. My little brother and I, we went out and started. I just grabbed, I got a gimbal and using my, these phones are high definition cameras and stuff now. So I grabbed my gimbal and my camera and a drone, and my little brother and I just started making our way through Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana and places like that, and we would just randomly stop and just ask people. Local hunters usually know a lot. Hey, have you ever seen any weird stones or pyramids or anything like that, or mounds or anything in the woods? And they always have, oh yeah, there's pyramids under the lake, there's pyramids here, and it led us down this path of like discovering, uh, you know you kind of stumble on these places, and maybe we're guided there energetically like you just mentioned, but we kind of stumbled on a place. We stumbled on a place called Standing Rock, or Shaking Rock, I'm sorry, in Georgia, and then we went to Georgia Guidestones where they used to be, and we went to there's a place called Rock Eagle Effigy. If you've never
Yeah.
seen that before, it's really interesting in Georgia. Lots of places like that, and you can literally just go. There's a place, and I'm sorry for those who listen are listening to the show. I talk a lot about this place near where I live called 40 Acre Rock in South Carolina, which is 40 acres of just flat rock, and you're like, there has to be some sort of a megalithic, or some kind of a stone city beneath this, because this doesn't make any sense. So all these places are out there. It just seems to be suppressed from us. And do you think that our governments are hiding these places for a particular reason? Because it does kind of feel like they're hiding it from us. They're suppressing this information from us.
I don't think it's the government. I think governments are too big and stupid to understand this stuff. They've
Me
got
too.
other things that they're doing quite badly. And not to get too digressed into politics at the moment.
Yeah.
Uh, no, it's the archaeological establishment. And these people are the most unpleasant people I've ever encountered. And that's just when they talk to each other. And when they're bored, they go after people like me, Graham Hancock, Robert Schoch, and so forth, because we have the temerity to actually go out there and ask questions and say, some of these theories don't hold up to scrutiny when you actually look at the available evidence. And I've come across other archaeologists who've given up their careers to do counseling or go become accountants or whatever because they said, we got tired of going on digs and people destroying the evidence because it didn't fit the current consensus. And they were astonished by what was going on, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And these people are serious. They wanted to go out into the field. They wanted to do their passion, and they said, we just gave up because evidence was being destroyed or put aside because it didn't fit the actual paradigm. So when people like me go out and write books and do documentaries that start prodding fingers at this stuff and saying, look, there's a much better, a more interesting story that's going on, they can't handle it because we're getting the attention and they're not. So I think there's a certain jealousy that goes on with it as well. But at least I know that I'm on the right path of inquiry if I'm upsetting them to that degree. But that's not the reason why I do it. I just want to get to the truth like they do. It's just that I tend to, involve myself with a bigger range of topics that allow me to reach a much more concrete conclusion. So I can talk to geologists, meteorologists, all kind of ologists, so that at the end of the day, I have a big sort of plethora of information in front of me, and I can say, wait a minute, that connects to that, that fits in with that, and I can draw a much better conclusion, which is actually closer to what the stories that the people who built them said in the first place. So my first point is to go and talk to the individuals around the world whose ancestors were closer to the events than we are, because they know the truth and we don't. We're guessing. So once you start putting the details together scientifically, it turns out that they didn't make stuff up in the first place. they were very serious about they were talking about, and why would they lie about what they did anyway?
Did you have a background in any kind of in science or anything like that that kinda led you down this path of, you know,
No, thank God.
I know, I was gonna say that
Because
that
actually,
seems
it's usually people who are on the outside that tend to see things with a greater clarity. That's not to say I don't like science. I mean, I rely on a lot of archaeological information where it really makes a lot of sense. I was just finished a book a few years ago about Scotland, about the origin of Scotland's sacred sites, because they are an anomaly. They begin on the northernmost fringes of Britain before the rest of Britain even knew what a monument was. And I want to know why. And I used a lot of their information to back up the story. But it was when you throw the additional information that's been taken out that the story starts coming together. And I'm talking about adding linguistics to the whole story. You know, why are some places called this, that, and the other? And you look at the origin of Gaelic and you trace it all the way back to Armenia, and the words mean exactly what the places were supposed to be doing. And then you look at it from the climatological point of view, and you put the story back another 2,000 years, and then it starts fitting together with the rest of what was happening in Europe. So it's my background really is about as far away from conventional science as possible, because I actually spent most of my life in advertising, which you may think, well, what do the two have to do with this? Well, actually, I didn't know either what was the connection was. But my job every day was to come up with a way to sell a product. In other words, solve a problem of communication. So I got to sell you a refrigerator. There's 1,000 refrigerators. Why is my refrigerator or my client's refrigerator better than yours? So I have a stack of, papers this thick from the marketing department, from the research department, and I got to put all of these things together and come up with a visual and a headline that sells you a better refrigerator. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm looking at piles of information in old books, research documents, scientific documents, and going, well, how does this fit together with the story that I'm trying to say? And that's what I still do. The paycheck is not quite as good, but that's okay because I get the fringe benefits are much more powerful because you do get to alter and change history in a very positive way.
Yeah, that's what I do as well. I'm a marketer by trade. I build websites and I take photos, and I think you're right. I think we have a perspective of looking at it from literally as a photographer through a different lens for me,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so when you got guys like journalists like Graham Hancock and people like you are out there, and we're just inquisitive. I mean, we want to know more about what's going on, and we want to go to these sites ourselves and, um, you know, do scientific research, which
Yeah,
sounds bizarre to people who grew up with us. You're like, I grew up down a dirt road in a trailer park, and it's like people are like, "What are you doing? Science stuff? What's going on with you?" So, but it's pretty interesting that all this. It almost feels like it comes to me in a way. Does it feel like it comes to you like information, or you get led in a certain direction?
yeah, and it's almost like a magnetic attraction, and I found that as being part of the magic of what happens with this type of work. Once your passion is involved in something and you're open-minded and your heart is true, it's amazing what happens. The books that fall out of the shelves. I remember a very famous case of my first book, which was about crop circles, and I had no idea that I was ever going to write a book on the subject. Least of all because it was going to become an international bestseller, which it did. I remember being stuck, and again, not being a scientist by trade, I was picking up information about the soil content, about the soil being very different to the soil around the crop circle in the middle of the field. The way the plants had been bent, the water had disappeared from the plants, they'd been slightly cooked on the outside. There was a magnetic spherules also next to the soil. And there were gravitation anomalies, electromagnetic anomalies, and I figured, how does this all come together? How do I put these things together? How do they make sense? And I got a cup of coffee, went back to my computer, got an email from someone who lives not far from the Coral Castle in Florida, which is an incredible place, by the way, one of the most anomalous sites in America, built by a 5'2" Latvian, and he talks about defying gravity. It's a whole story in itself. And this email comes in and says, if you look at this Russian paper from 1956, written by names which I can't pronounce, it'll show you how magnetism, gravity, iron spherules, and the bending of crops come together. I'm thinking, who the hell has been reading my mind? Not just hacking my computer or listening to my thoughts, but literally listening to what's in my head. I thought, well, thank you very much. I'll go and get that from the Library of Congress, which I did. And the answer to my question was right there. So I wrote back to this gentleman. I said, thank you. You've just saved me months of research. And the email bounced back and said, there's no such address. And this stuff happens all the time. Whenever I'm looking for something and I'm guided by my passion for my work, something comes out of the woodwork that just suddenly opens the door to exactly what I wanted to look at. It happens every single time. And that's why I love what I do, because I call it the fringe benefits. It's as though there's some kind of management looking after you. You know what I'm saying? And it does. I hear it from many, many people as well. They think it's sort of synchronicity, but when they sit down and look back upon their life's work, they realize there's someone pulling the strings here somewhere, and we don't know who it is or what it is, but it's a wonderful relationship.
Well, it's also where attention goes, energy flows. Once you set your antenna to it, just like a magnet, you just start attracting all these things, and it's weird because those things really do happen. Like you just said, all of a sudden you're getting emails and text messages and phone calls from people, and you find just the right thing. You might even be watching a documentary like the one you mentioned earlier, and it connects something that you had just thought in your mind. I love those kind of things because that's kind of where I feel like I'm being led. I kind of put all of everything I've done as far as web design and photography and marketing. I have my own business and I've kind of put it on the back burner to do this show and to and I feel like I'm being led to sort of go out and explore. And that's it feels like it's about to burst out of me. I got to go do this. And
Exactly.
I have no real reason why. I'm just like, okay, I will go do this. And it does
It,
feel like I'm
it,
being led by a supreme being, God, the
yeah,
universe.
it's a
Um,
passion.
yeah.
It's a spiritual place. I mean, I remember walking through Carnac in France, where one of the biggest concentrations of megaliths in the world happens to be. And I was just there a few weeks ago. I mean, 80,000 monuments, and that's a fraction of what was there originally. It's like walking through a forest of stone. It's incredible. And some of these things are the biggest standing rocks on the planet. One of them is over 42 feet tall. And that was before lightning hit it and snapped off the top of the rock. And I'm 2 meters tall, 6'5", and I just looked like a tiny little cat next to the actual stone. And I was walking past this bucket and spade store in Carnac, and there's that unmistakable smell of old paper when you go past the shop. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And I got led by my nose, and I walked across the store right to the back, and there's someone saying, "Monsieur, can I help you?" I said, "No, no, no, don't interrupt me." And I went to the back of the store, past a bunch of plastic spades and buckets for making sandcastles. And right in between a couple of beach blankets, there was this little booklet. And I picked it up. And it talks about how the stones are alive. And I thought, hello. And it's a book by a skeptic who was an electrical engineer who went around Carnac testing the menhirs, the dolmens, the standing stones, and the passage mounds, and he came to an incredible conclusion. Pure science, okay, it's either right or wrong. And he said, yes, it's true. The stones and the composition of the mineral in the stone, and the reason why they were sourced sometimes from as much as 40 miles away, is because they act like batteries. They attract the local electromagnetic current, they store it, and then they release it about every 70 minutes. So if you happen to be there at the wrong time at the wrong place and you touch the stone, you get an electric shock. Sometimes it will send you flying. Trust me, I've done it. It's not much fun. You can't feel your arm for about 15 minutes. But he said no. The design and the shape of the monument either defines what it acts like a big coil, like in a car, or it acts like a battery, or it attracts an accumulator. So these things are all connected, and even the choice of stone. I mean, you're talking about that, was it 40-acre
40
piece
acre
of stone?
rock. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, the stones are literally chosen to stand on a massive granite outcrop in Brittany, in France, and which is made of highly piezoelectric material. So you've got these needles standing on what essentially is already a battery on top of the of France's most active earthquake zone. And what's happening is every minute of the day, the Earth is moving ever so slightly. It's in a state of friction, and that tiny bit of friction is transferring to the stones and the quartz in the stones, and the stones are alive, exactly as the name of the book says. So, and that just came from walking down the street, looking for a place for lunch, and you get that smell of paper, and you go, "There's something interesting in here to do with what I'm looking for," and it really cemented the scientific research into what the megaliths were doing.
Yeah, I sort of look at, standing now I haven't done, you've been obviously, you've been to a lot of these different sites. I have not. So I'm just going off of sort of what I read and my theory on things, but I kinda look at these standing stones, these stone circles, these dolmens as, these because 'cause they're all usually, like, blue stone, am I correct about that? They're usually made of,
Stonehenge,
like, blue Stonehenge
the
for yeah, for
original Stonehenge is made of bluestone, yes.
yeah. So I kinda look at it as like a stabilizer of energy, kinda like encircles or entraps the energy of these telluric currents. Is that far off from what you're saying?
No, it's the same. It is the same thing. It's the shape of the monument that defines its use and its the direction in which the current grows. They did a very similar thing in England where they put electrodes around Stonehenge and Avebury, the world's biggest stone circle. And the conclusion was that they found that that the land goes silent at night, just like a person. It has to recover from the day's work and all the tourism. And in the morning, just before the sun rises, all the electrical current in the land is attracted to places like Stonehenge and Avebury, and it circulates around the ditch, around the site. And something magical happens, which the Egyptians knew about at least 6,000 years ago. They talk about how when the sun clips the horizon, and I don't mean the whole sun comes up, just when the sun clips the horizon at dawn, there's a kind of an opening, literally a portal opens in the middle of Stonehenge, the two big stones, and at Avebury, and all that current that's been circulating around the henge suddenly floods like a big sluice gate has been let open, and it floods the temple, and the magnetic readings inside the temples go through the roof. And then it slowly dies down through the day, and the whole thing repeats again every single day. So again, even these big temples are alive, and it's all to do with the way that the site is designed to manipulate the energy. But the one thing that stood out was, and they can't explain this, they said the energy is attracted to these monuments, but it gets doubled in frequency at dawn. We don't know how that is possible with a stone circle. We just don't understand how that works. But if you're looking at a particle collider in Switzerland, it's the same process. The stones have a magnetic polarity. So one stone is facing the inside with a magnetic pole, which is a positive charge, and the opposing stone has a negative charge. And you go positive, negative, positive, negative. So when you're walking down here, it's like following a particle collider. And if you go there at dawn and you walk around the site, you feel like you're being pushed like a big atom around the site. So it's actually true. They understood the laws of nature and how to manipulate these laws. It's it's much more complicated than we imagine. Just go back to what the ancients were saying, that the planets, living beings, even the Greeks said the same thing, and that was only 2,500 years ago. Everything in the universe is a living organism. So if you accept the fact that we are a mirror of the planet that gave us birth, and what keeps us alive is the oxygen and the blood that flows through the veins and the arteries of the body. Well, the Earth has exactly the same thing, but you can't see it unless you're very intuitive, or unless, like NASA, you have the technology to actually look and map the telluric currents, and they have. And back in, I think it was 2004, I believe it was, they issued the press release, and it blew my mind because they mentioned magnetic portals on the face of the Earth. And they talk about how I think it's every 18 minutes, magnetic portals, and to use their expression, they come out of the Earth and they link to the solar wind about 1,000 miles above the Earth's atmosphere, and then they link all the way to the heart of the sun, and possibly way beyond that. We don't know. The fact is that in the Indian Ayurveda, which is a text that begins around 16,000 BC, and it gets rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, they had already described how the whole process works using completely different terminology, using snakes as a metaphor for these winding currents. Now, they talk about serpents that flow along the land that are mirrored in the sky, that are the arrows of sorcerers. Now, a sorcerer is someone who works with source energy. That's what it means. And the arrow is the intention. You're connecting one piece of energy to one that's in the sky. So they're already talking about the fact that the Earth is a living organism. It's connected to other living organisms in the universe, and at certain times of the day are stronger and weaker than others. Just like you and I need a cup of coffee to get a pick me up during the day to keep this body going and this mind moving. Then it gets a bit stranger because we also have gravity at work, and the sun, of course, is the biggest influencer of gravity here on this planet. So, for example, when the sun is on the opposite side of the planet at 2 to 3 in the morning, or 3 or 4 in the morning, it allows a window on the opposite side of the Earth to where you happen to be, where the gravitational pull is weakened, and it coincides with REM sleep, which is when your soul escapes the pull of gravity and it goes walkabout and it comes back very quickly into the body at about 3 to 4 in the morning, and you go, "Where did I just go?" Yeah, because your window of opportunity is closing again because the Earth is moving, and therefore the gravity field is strengthening. So it's that window of opportunity that allows the soul to escape and have this shamanic moment. The Hopi know about this because there's a magnetic portal inside their kivas called the Sipapu reed, the reed of heaven. And it's right next to the big fireplace if you have to look very closely. Same in Japan, they call it the reed of heaven. In Persia, they call it the golden thread of the sky. And they know that it connects a sacred site to the management and way beyond. So the fact that we built these temples and stone circles and all other ancient monuments and pyramids where they are, it wasn't just by chance. They actually figured out the hotspots where these energies congregate, and they harness them by using highly piezoelectric stone that then amplifies the effect, which essentially turns them into portals, for lack of any other word, where the laws of physics as we know them are slowly manipulated to allow you, under a certain state, to leave and return if you so choose to. And there's been so many cases, Reese, of people who go into the king's chamber, especially if you pay $15,000 and you get to spend the night in the box overnight. I can't tell you how many people have actually left the body, gone walkabout, and they come back in the morning completely altered, completely different people. And some people actually go there without knowing what they're doing, and they open up the building in the morning. There's a dead guy in the box because leaving the body is easy; it's returning that's the problem. And the ancients also knew that it was part of the initiation process and the protocol that allow you to leave and return in a very measured form. But the whole point was understanding energy, understanding how it connects to other bodies in the universe, and understanding how you can be part of that process.
Do you think that telluric currents are the same as ley lines? Because that's what I've been calling them.
Ah, no, they're not. Ley
Think
lines
so?
are a term that connect, they're geometric connections, ley lines. So if you have three or more sites that share similar functions, let's say age, shape, purpose, so you can connect them with a straight line, that's a ley. Sometimes the leys, let's say three temples on that ley line, may share the same telluric currents, but sometimes they don't. Most often they actually don't. So most people say, well, there's a ley line between Avebury and Stonehenge. Well, there isn't because there's two sites. You need three. You can make a connection between any 2 points in the
Sure.
universe. Three, now that's something else. And it's like, well, no, actually, there's the energy current that goes through Avebury actually misses Stonehenge, and it goes to a site not far from Stonehenge, which has a completely different purpose. So, yes, people tend to get the two mixed up, but sometimes they do align. And in southern Britain, there was a very old tradition that talks about this sort of spine that goes through East Anglia, which is the eastern part of England, and it goes all the way down to the tip of Cornwall, like a big pole. And it was said that on this pole, there are hundreds of sacred places that go back into the Neolithic era that are connected by energy currents and magical things that occur. And there was a scientist who's also a dowser and a great researcher in England, good friends of mine, by the way. They wrote this great book where for 10 years they went around looking at these sites and they realized that all of these sites are connected by a ley. 800 sites are connected in a straight line across southern Britain. But also, the two energy currents, the positive and the masculine currents, behave like two serpents. And whenever they connect and intertwine, they connect all of these dots along this pole. So that is where a ley line and the telluric currents happen to work. And the same thing happens in Europe as well. They found another ancient story in Delos, in this tiny island in the middle of the Aegean off the coast of Greece. they talked about the same thing. All of these sites dedicated to Apollo or his Christian version, Michael or George, they're all lining this spine across Europe. And for the next 20 years, Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst, the authors, they went around searching for this stuff around Europe, and they found the same thing. Thousands of sacred sites on this pole off the coast of Ireland that goes through France, down the spine of Italy, through Greece, and they end up in Mount Megiddo in Israel. And again, same thing. The energy currents flow through them and around them, but wherever they intersect, they form this magical occurrence. It's a bit like watching the caduceus, the symbol for the medical industry, with a big pole with the two serpents around it. That's what it actually looks like 5 miles up in an airplane.
You don't think of that as like electrical and magnetic fields flowing? That's
Yes,
okay.
they're electric and magnetic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I read a book by Thomas, I can't remember his name. Is the Ley Lines of the U.S. and UK, and it was what introduced me to telluric currents, the idea of telluric currents. So that was a very interesting book, and definitely shaped the way I sort of see things, and it opened up a lot of it opened my eyes to a lot of different avenues. And I guess I was asking about the ley lines because I see these different spots like Stonehenge and Avebury and places like that as these nodes. Kinda like how Earth is a node, right, for the bigger universe. Is
Mm.
that sort of, um am I wrong in thinking that as well? Is that sort of how you see it as, like, these node, these X points, this or these, yeah, I believe the government US government calls them X points, but we call them portals, I guess they call them X points. Um,
It's the same thing, basically. Yeah, NASA calls them the X points, but they occur up in the atmosphere. But we have the same thing down here on the planet. The problem is that the grid is actually missing because so much has been destroyed over time, and we're still discovering stuff in the middle of the forests in Guatemala, which has now come to light, and it's adding to our understanding. But in terms of the mathematics, if you look at the mathematics that essentially forms our understanding of the precessional cycle, which is the for people who don't understand this, it's the way that the Earth turns on its axis. Every 25,920 years, it completes a perfect spin of the Earth's axis. And while it's doing that, the equator is tilting, 4 degrees up and down over 21,600 years. I hope I got my the facts right there. And what happens is that there's a numerical value based on 72, which is essentially the key number to understanding the cycle of the sun, the moon, and also the way we measure the sky in the 12 houses of the zodiac, which forms one house of the zodiac takes 2,150 years to complete, and you go to the next cycle and so on. These numbers are hardwired into many mythologies, in many folk traditions, so that you never forget how the universe works and how the Earth works. So you have applied that to the face of the Earth, and you start looking for, let's say, I can't remember who did this originally. They figured that the pyramids of Egypt at Giza would form zero as a grid, and you go 72 degrees, and it divides us from that around the world like longitudes, and you hit some of the world's oldest sacred sites. So there is a grid here on the Earth, and it's incomplete because, again, a lot of these places are now underwater thanks to the end of the Ice Age. I found at least 7 places where the gods lived, and they're gone. They're underwater, but the memory's still there in places like the Polynesian Islands. They know exactly where these places are. So there is an actual mathematical grid that goes around the Earth to show that these places weren't just haphazard. They're marking the energy spots, but they're also mathematically aligned to be a mirror image of how mathematically the Earth spins on itself and also how it relates to the solar system. It's always been said by ancient cultures that God is a mathematician, and that's just to help people understand that everything is based on number and geometry. If you want to understand how the universe works, and they're absolutely right.
do you ever look into, or do you ever think about the idea that the grid system could be purposely being destroyed by governments to prevent access to different realms for whatever reason?
I don't know. It's very difficult to get into conspiracy theories because, you need evidence, you need proof. I mean, we can say, yeah, they did this, they did that. But again, if you look at big institutions, not just government, but big institutions, they rarely function properly. They've got more important things to do, like rigging the system or whatever, or enriching themselves to get into this nefarious stuff. And I think people like the old Nazi regime, the Third Reich, they were very much into this because they tried to figure out these ancient systems of knowledge whereby there were portals that existed and you access to power, unlimited power. Well, of course, power in their terms didn't mean the power that the ancients were talking about. The ancients were talking about a natural energy which allows you to expand your spiritual development. That's what the Nazis were doing. They were after pure energy to control the world. So, from their point of view, they were abusing these things, right? Right down to the fact that they borrowed the swastika from ancient systems like the Hindu and the Hopi and the Navajo. The swastika was a very ancient symbol of balance. That's what it actually represents. So they were definitely could be proved that they were after the sites, but they weren't there to destroy them. They were there to take something from them to try and abuse it, but they never succeeded because they had no fundamental understanding. I've heard stories from people coming back from Iraq that they destroyed some of these very old sacred places in order to shut these places down. But I wonder to what degree they actually know what they're actually doing, because in order to understand this at a fundamental level, you have to delve very deep into the mysteries. And these people are as far from the mysteries teachings as you could possibly believe. They're much more into facts, figures, and very left brain thinking. We're talking about right brain thinking here, the subtlety of things. They're not into woo woo by any length of the imagination. So unless you're on the inside and you can bring some information out, I know I was very skeptical about people talking about these conspiracies about shutting down. The one thing that I do see recently is the rise of extreme tourism shutting down the sites. And I was just joking during COVID. I took 4 groups of people to Egypt because that wasn't difficult to get into. And we had the best time because we're the only group in the country. And it was so quiet. And I remember talking to my people and I said, you know what? I don't know about you guys, but I'm standing in front of the Great Pyramid and I can hear it breathing a sigh of relief. There are no tourists, and the building is exhausted. And it's the same with Stonehenge. I refuse to take people to Stonehenge because it's wrecked by tourism. And if you're into the intuitive side of things like I am, and you can hear the sights, I've been doing this for so long, I can see the energy where it flows around me. I can hear the building. And anybody can do this, by the way. It's not magic. You can do it as well if you just allow yourself to work with this. And I go to Stonehenge, and it's really disappointing. It's just a bunch of tall rocks standing there like they're bored. But if you come back afterwards and you know how to get in there, talk to the guards and all of that, like I used to in the old days, and you go there with the right intention, it's like the site reacts to you and it opens up and you goes, wow, thank you for respecting me. It's what I call the spirit of place. The memory of the people that work with this site is still there. It remembers everything. And you go there with the right intention, and the site is so different, so welcoming, and you can actually sense things. You can almost begin to feel like you're connecting to another level of reality, which you kind of are under the right circumstances. So I am more afraid of what tourism is doing to the sacred places and literally shutting down the energy and the whole purpose of why they were built. Chichen Itza is another of my favorites. And I'm always reluctant to take people there because now you can barely see the pyramids for all the vendors around the buildings. You can't hear the site anymore. We have to go there at the crack of dawn or late in the day when everybody's gone back to Cancun to the beach. So we can sit there, hear what's going on, and take in the site and the relationship of things. And then you can almost hear the site coming back to life. But it is getting more difficult. So, from my experience, I'd be more concerned about what tourism is doing than what the government is doing.
Well, I mean, the reason I ask is because if there's a place that could transcend, I mean, you could, we could skip right around the government, for example, right? I mean, if you can access infinite knowledge and have these enlightening type of experiences when you go to stone circles or even crop circles. I talked to Karen Alexander, and she was saying how some people go in there, and it's Karen Alexander from Temporary Temples in the UK, and she was saying how some people can go in crop circles and have this elated experience and the best conversations and all this. And there are some who can go in there and just feel complete unease and sick. And like you said, some people will die, right? I mean, I'm not saying she's not saying that they
Well, they
die
haven't
in the
died in
crop
crop
circles.
circles
Not
yet.
crop circles, right, yeah, yeah, but
I
from
mean,
the energy from,
it's
has it
about it's about the resonance of the individual and the resonance of the site. There has to be a sympathetic resonance between the two for the magic to occur. So yes, I have people in my groups when go on tour. Some of them just don't want to be here, and they paid a lot of money to go to this particular place. Excuse me, and they get there and they're disappointed, and I look at them and I go, well, wait till you get to the Temple of Etu. Why? Because this is not your frequency. The eighth temple had its own frequency.
Huh.
And if you match the frequency, then interesting things occur. But you got to let it happen. You can't go there expecting something to happen. It won't happen. If you go there just with an open mind and as a seeker, that's when the magic really happens. Because there's some places I go to and I feel like perhaps I should come back some other time. It's like it's giving me that sort of go away, you idiot. Come back when you know what the hell you're doing. And it's happened to me many times when I was learning my craft. And one of them was the Devil's Den in England. You can guarantee with something's called the Devil something, it's very good for you. But again, I was still learning my craft, and that place is raw power. It would be like me sticking my fingers in the electricity outlet. It was not going to do me any good. But 4 years later, after I had developed certain skills, I went back there, and it was like I was getting the red carpet treatment. That's how it works, you see. So they're self-protecting. Again, it goes back to the stone. It's piezoelectric. If you send a packet of information to the material in the stone, it will act on that. So your intention, my intention, are packets of electromagnetic information. And this has been proven at Princeton, by the way. They did famous experiments which are peer reviewed. Your intention can actually be directed to a certain location, and the stone will remember that forever, unless it's superseded by another command. I'm pointing to this experiment where 20 people in a room, the intention was to change the computerized drumbeat of the computer, and they actually succeeded in doing this in the laboratory. So that's the power of intention. So if you're the right intention with the right site, then there's a communication that happens. If you're not, like if you're too much in your left brain, like the government and people like that, and a lot of scientists are also like that, they won't get the kind of stuff that we're picking up in terms of the magical ability of sacred sites. But then again, I know people who are scientists who are very intuitive and they're very open-minded and they report the weirdest stuff, especially in the Great Pyramid about seeing people coming out of the stones, which is something that happened to me on my first visit. And I had no idea that was even possible. That changes your life, as does being levitated in a crop circle, by the way, which is what happened to me when I was in the middle of writing the book. And that is an experience. I guarantee you, it changes your life. That's when I gave up my day job and I went, no, I'm going to put a book together because this is much more important. People need to know about the potential of what's going on here because there are huge benefits for society.
Have you guys? Yeah, I want to say you, and I'm assuming there's people that go with you to different sites and things like that. Do y'all ever explore the idea of what I was just talking about earlier? How telluric currents come out of fault lines and volcanoes and things like that. I grew up in an area of Charleston, South Carolina, that is pretty powerful fault line, and right where we grew up, the house we grew up is in the middle of the national forest, and in the middle of a national forest. And the house that my mom lives in now, when she's home, she gets a lot of migraines. She's also had like time slips, missing time type of situations happen. Do you think that that is where these sort of telluric currents are coming up and affecting the our atoms in our body? I kind of see it as like it separates our atoms, these little tiny universes inside of us, and it shifts us into a different reality almost.
Oh,
In
yes. It goes back to sympathetic resonance again. I mean, the energy is just energy. It doesn't give a damn one way or the other. But sometimes you get stuck. For example, I'm actually in my apartment. The only place where I can work and I can put my computer is on a telluric current. It runs diagonally through this building, which is linked to a building that I used to live 2 blocks away, which is an old Abenaki sacred site. There are 6 currents running under that building, and it attracts the most unusual people, of course, because they're immediately attracted to the building for that particular reason. So sometimes people get a little bit anxious because the energy is running through their property because they're misaligned with it. It's not because it's bad for you. It's just that you are misaligned with it. Sometimes you just have to go out for a walk, open the windows, clear the energy in the building. Or just because there's something inside your body that needs to be improved in terms of health in order for you to align with that energy. Sometimes the energy just gets stuck because of what we've built on it, like a nuclear bunker or something, or there's an oil spill, or people have put metal rods, iron rods, especially into the ground to put a big skyscraper, and it completely distorts the way that the natural current is supposed to flow. So then you get professionals like dowsers to go in, move the energy, and reconnect it and restore the balance. Native people know all about this process. So these things are everywhere, and the current is just basically it changes every minute of the day depending on the way that the Earth is spinning, how the core is moving, its relationship to the sun, the moon, and so forth. It literally is a living organism made of. I dare hate say this because I hate snakes. They're invisible snakes that flow around the landscape. They're always moving and doing this. And wherever you find a sacred site, that's what anchors them to the spot. So the energy never gets to move. But in terms of good energy and bad energy, it's sometimes if we do something stupid that's so out of balance with nature, then the energy goes bad, and that's when you have to get someone to go there professionally and fix the whole thing.
Those those hot spots, those where the currents meet, those nodes that we talked about earlier, you call them portals, correct? They're like energetic gateways.
Pretty much because that's where the laws of physics, as we understand them, behave a little bit differently, and it ties into the gravitational field as well. It's slightly either a bit stronger or a bit weaker at those locations. So it creates these hotspots of energy where all kinds of potential is possible.
When people have these altered states of consciousness in these hotspots, these portals, do where do they go when they go to when they access information or maybe have an out of body experience? Where is it that they're going that you
Oh, they go
think
to Detroit.
the
Um,
the what? The
they go
what?
to Detroit.
Oh, Detroit.
Uh, which is actually a very nice city, I have to say. It goes part again, you have to listen to what the ancestors were saying about this stuff. The Hopi called it Powhaha, as do the Sioux, and they said that they refer to them as increase centers. And I asked them, I said, "What do you mean by increase centers?" Said, "Well, there's the land, and then there's special places on the land where the earth is much more abundant with energy, and that's where we go to sit in a place of reverence to connect with, the management or a national reference library in a shamanic state. And then we come back and we tell the tribe what's going on. This has been going on for tens of thousands of years. To communicate with something greater than the physical world and certainly greater than yourself, to be one step ahead of the living universe. So if you follow the initiation traditions around the world, and the Greeks and the Egyptians left us a lot of information about this, the temples and the sacred caves that they created at these hotspots, again allow the laws of physics to be subtly different, and they took advantage of that by going to a state of reverence, and then they were able to leave the body for about 3 days, connect with whatever it is that you're looking for. So you got to leave the body with an intention. Let's say, I want to go and have a shamanic moment where I want to understand what crop circles or stone circles are all about and who built them. And you take a poison, believe it or not, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and you slowly have an induced near-death experience, which sounds very harrowing. And it was. It took you 3 years of training to go through the process, but it allowed the soul to leave the body, not just in a dream state. You've actually physically left the body, and you go walk about in the what I call the other world, whatever you want to call it, the underworld, the upper world, the other world, another level of reality where everything exists simultaneously, but it also has an astral reference library where everything that existed, that exists, and will exist happens to exist at the same time. If you can wrap your head around that without going mad, you're doing very, very well. But the point is, you go there with a specific function and you plug the information that you need. And then when you come back 3 days later, you're declared risen from the dead, which is a very old term that precedes Christianity by 8,000 years, by the way, and it's provable. And you come back and you apply that information in your daily life, and you're now in control of your conscious state. You're in control of your manifestation process, and you're spiritually enlightened. That's what the whole point of initiation and enlightenment was all about. They would find these hotspots of energy which allow the process to be much better and much quicker and more direct. Today we go on weekend retreats to take ayahuasca, and I hope I'm not sort of getting you into trouble in South Carolina when I say
No,
this.
no, you're
We can
good.
do this in Maine because it's all legal. But the point is, you can go and do this with ayahuasca, but it's an approximation. Doing the drug thing is an approximation of that process. And if you go to Guatemala or South America, they'll say, well, give us 8 months or maybe a year and a half of your life, and we'll teach you how to do it properly without the drug, because the drug and the images that you get are an approximation of the other world. It's not the other world, it's an approximation. It's a chemical reaction in your brain. Leaving the body is a completely different process, and that's why people like Plato did it several times. Pythagoras did it 5 times. Leonardo da Vinci, most of his information came from the process that I've just described, as did Isaac Newton. And he actually alludes to the fact, because he couldn't come out and just say it, because by now the church has control and has a monopoly on this kind of stuff. And if you mentioned that in broad daylight, you'd be basically burnt alive at the stake. But if you read his work carefully, he insinuates that he went through that process, and he was a Rosicrucian, people who actually understood how this process actually works. So these little hotspots of energy are very useful for accessing a reality in the state that it actually is, not how we perceive it. And that's a direct quote from Plato. He said, there's only one place where you'll find true knowledge and wisdom, and that is the other world. You have to go there while you're living, and then you bring the information back and you apply in your daily life, and you get on with your life and become a better person, or not.
I see it as I look at things from a Christian point of view because obviously I'm a Christian, as a lot of people in the United States are. But I look at that other world as possibly being the Garden of Eden. And when you do stuff like ayahuasca and DMT, you're eating the forbidden fruit and you're learning from the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I'm very open-minded to everything, but that's kinda how I look at it, and, I can see how people would think that you get corrupted if you go and learn information about something, maybe because we have to look at why are we here? I mean, we're a very unique being. We're in this little tiny sliver of electromagnetic energy, this little tiny sliver of visible light. What makes us different than so we're in that 0.0035% of the visible light spectrum. I mean, of the electromagnetic spectrum. What about the 99.665% that we can't see? Like, what makes us special enough that we have to be here? And it seems to me that we're pretty clearly here to learn something or to do something or to maybe elevate our consciousness in some way. Um, so
No,
it
you're
would
right. Yeah, you're right. And
so
in fact, the early Christian Gnostics said exactly the same thing. I mean, there's a big difference between early Christianity and Catholicism, a huge difference, night and day. And if you look at the early Christian Gnostic texts, they were like Buddhists, and the Buddhists were like the Zen masters. They were saying exactly the same thing. It's about understanding your purpose while you're here, and the idea is to experience death while you live. That was a phrase they actually used. And then the whole concept of what we learned in Catholic school on Sunday, and I was raised that way as well, was borrowed from so many ancient texts. But they left out all the good bits and they misinterpreted the original text. So if you follow, for example, the Old Testament and see where it was borrowed from, which is the Babylonian story of creation, who had already put in certain things in there to make them better than everybody else around them. And they stole their information from the Sumerians, who had borrowed their information from the Armenians. And we're now talking 10,000 years ago. If you look at the original stories, it's much more complete, and it was all about the same thing. Paradise, which is Paradisa, it's an Arabic word. It means a walled enclosure, and you go through a window into this paradisial state, which is called the other world. And you can only get there while you live by having this out of body experience in a sacred place. And they're very clear about this, and they have these paradisial gardens still in Iraq, in Iran, if we haven't blown them up yet, where they mimic in three-dimensional form the perfect geometric garden, which is the mirror of the other world. But that's not what the other world actually is. This is just a mirror of the thing. You actually have to go to a sacred site and experience the actual thing, leave the body, and then come back with this knowledge of everything. So you're drinking from the tree of good and evil, because there's some things, you're right, well, some things that humans shouldn't know before their level of understanding. And this was something that goes back 10,000 years, when, the gods are suddenly appearing all around the world, and hunter-gatherers are being taught the accoutrements of civilization. And the story appears at the same time all around the world. And I'm not talking about invisible gods, I'm talking about real people. A god in the old days was nothing more than you and I, who understand the laws of nature. So if I want to become the god of water, I have to understand how water works, and then I become the god of water. So anybody could do it. So it applies to real people, not imaginary beings. So we lost track of that. And the idea was that you drink from this library, this font of information, but you have to be aware of your limitations as well. So, for example, if you go into a peaceful community and they want to go and have a jolly in the other world and learn about weapons of war, it's not going to end well, because you really shouldn't be teaching or giving people certain technology that they can't handle. They will abuse it and misuse it. And that was the whole point of the story of the garden of good and evil, was that there's some things you should know if you are responsible, and some things that you should learn at some other time once you've developed the stage of maturity where you can handle the information. So it's kind of a safeguard. And I think that I like the original story from where all this comes from, because it makes so much more sense. It's like I was saying at the beginning, when I was learning all of this 30 odd years ago. Yeah, I got very arrogant at the beginning. I thought I knew it all after I read 2 books. I had these experiences in pyramids and crop circles. I thought, Christ, I'm a god. Well, I got smacked down pretty quickly, because I am walking faster than than I can crawl. So it was a good way for me to look in the mirror and go, wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. I am getting very cocky about this. And what do I know? Well, the moment you recognize that within yourself, suddenly the world opens up again and goes, well, do you want to learn some more, or do you want to go back to being a complete moron and abusing this information? And my path was, no, I want to do it right. I really want to get this right, which is why 30 years later, I'm still writing and doing documentaries, and I'm still going, I'm just scratching the surface at this point. I think I know it all, but I don't. And that's the beauty of it. I've learned how to learn what I need to know at the right moment and apply it, and then go, well, where do I go from here? Because I've now accumulated so much information, and hopefully I'm being inspiring to other people, but I still don't know everything. And then that's where you go to the next level of information, and it finds you. So that's the way you do it. It's a gradual, enlightening process, and that's what the ancients were always, excuse me, the ancients were trying to teach us, and why the information was kept secret, because you have to have checks and balances as you're going up in knowledge, because knowledge comes with responsibility.
2 more questions, then I'll let you go if that's okay, sir. One, what would be the most potent portal or most potent ancient site in the
Ah,
world where these energies, happen? Is it somewhere that we know, or is it somewhere that's hidden?
again, it depends where you are in your stage of development. The most simple portal can be the most potent for you. The most complex portal, which is for me the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Bent Pyramid, which is even more important, Stonehenge, despite all the tourism. It's a big junction box, but for me, they apart from the Bent Pyramid, they don't do much, because I've already experienced these places and I've learned something from them, and now I'm moving along. I'm developing as I'm going. And now I'm beginning to find that the simplest of places, a simple standing stone, a very humble the big standing stone will give me exactly the hit of energy and information I need to go on and do my work. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a, 15-foot tall stone on a Scottish island, which is one of my favorite places, and I just stand there with my back to it, and I'm literally just away with the pharaohs. I'm not expecting anything, but I'm going there with a question. I'm going, what is this all about? How can I make sense of this, and how can I be a better teacher about what was laid down here? And I just watch the world going by. A bird flies by, a sheep eats a bit of grass, and suddenly you're getting these visions, information, and I start writing this down, and then I research it. I go to the library, I find scientific papers, and it's there. So that's the way I do it. And for me, it was just a simple standing stone. Some people need the whole spectacle. They need to go to big pyramids and they need to have a picture of them in front of them for Facebook. If that's your thing, that's great, but that's not what it's all about. It's about the relationship of you to the site. So sometimes the simplest of places will have the best stuff to teach you. But from a personal point of view, one of my favorite places is called, and I'm not talking lightly here, the birthplace of the gods. And it's a real place. That's what they call it. And it's in the South Island of New Zealand. I wrote pretty much a substantial part of my book, The Missing Lands, about this, how all these places that occur around the world, they're all connected by the same mythology and the same use of very tall people. They're about 8.5 feet tall, by the way, and the bones are usually found in giants' graves in France and in Britain. And here, we're talking just before the end of the Ice Age, so we're talking 13,000 years ago. They used to sail from Lake Titicaca, where we have the world's oldest sacred site, to Easter Island when it was an archipelago, not when it's an island, when it was back an archipelago. And they used to continue sailing to this place in the South Island of New Zealand, about 2 hours drive from Canterbury, sorry, Christchurch. And there it is, a natural landscape temple with these eroded limestone outcrops, but the outcrops have been shaped by human hands. And after 12,000 years of rain and harsh weather, you can still make out the shapes of images of people and animals. And I thought, okay, I know that nature can do this quite well as well. Where the light hits limestone in a certain way, you'll see shapes and it'll be suggestive of things. But I couldn't understand why I kept saying these were made by real people. And then within a week, I met a bunch of people called the Whitehearts, were one of the oldest people on the planet that you've never heard of. And they used to live on Easter Island during the Ice Age, and they interacted with the gods. And their oral tradition talks about the gods, the Urukeu, which means the red-haired tall people, going to the birthplace of the gods and literally with little mauls, chock, 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 banging out the limestone, and you can still see the cut marks made by the mauls, and they would shape them into these tutelary images of the gods or other images of people or animals, and that was their classroom, and it's still there today. That is a place that is unalterated by human folly or any kind of warfare. It's hard to get a place to eat. There's only one road. A car comes by every half an hour, 3 hours away in the distance. I guarantee you'll have an incredible experience there just by sitting there, being silent, and you understand how a temple in its pure natural state can be a powerful place. And it's helped me to do so much of my work. And again, I went there expecting nothing. I just sat there, respected the spirit of the place, and let things go through. And before you knew it, I had 2 chapters written. So that's how it works.
So the potency is calibrated within us, and then the portal is a location. It could be sometimes. I guess you could get you. The portal could be you, right? I mean, that would almost
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yes, and it's absolutely true. You don't need any of these places because you already are the portal. Jesus said it very well himself. Very underrated guy, by the way, in terms of what he says, because it's always written in allegory. You have to understand what he's actually saying through the veil of the mysteries teachings. And he said, the kingdom of God, it resides within you. Yes, once you've become a single person, by which I don't mean that you're not married, you have to harmonize your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere, your masculine and the feminine within you to become a unified field. And when that unified field is achieved, that temple is inside you because why? You're a mirror of the earth. The earth is a mirror of the cosmos. So you are already the God you were waiting for. It's not out there, it's inside here. And he said the same thing. God is within you as well, which any Buddhist would agree. So you don't need a temple. The temples were really built for a time when we lost the plot. So we know where to go to reconnect with the very thing that holds us together. It's a very beautiful and poetic thing, but I think the people, the architects who built these places had the foresight to see that in the 21st century, we would lose the plot, and we have lost the plot. We are so disconnected from nature, it's unbelievable. So now we know where to go, whether it's a standing stone or a pyramid or a Stonehenge. We know that the energy is there. We know that the geometry is shaped in a certain way that allows you to connect with the spirit of place. And if your resonance matches the resonance of the building, then you've reconnected back to the source. You become a sorcerer yet again. So it's there as an insurance policy, which is why I refer to these places as self-help centers.
Well, that's a good way to end it, sir. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We had some issues getting into the conversation, so I know I've taken up almost an hour and a half of your time. But for those who don't know much about you and want to know more about you, where can they find you at? And let us know about any kind of documentaries or books that you got coming out, and we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Oh, yes, this is going to drive people crazy because there's a website called Invisible Temple, and it's at invisibletemple.com. You'll find all the books, all the documentaries, articles, and my latest one, which is Megalith, which is I'm very proud of having achieved this one. It talks about how these megaliths were built, how they were put there, the purpose, and all the science behind it, and it's beautifully shot. It's one of my most prized things that I've done over the years. I'm very proud of it. So go and enjoy it.
Mr. Silva, thank you for joining me, sir. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Been a pleasure.
Well, I'm standing at the crossroads. I don't know where to go. I'm losing control. Trying not to sell my soul. I'm standing at the crossroads. I don't know where to go. I'm losing control. Trying not to sell my soul. Can you point me in the right direction? God send me your blessing. I'm so tired of stressing. This music's turned to obsession. I got a long way to go to ease my pain. My clothes soaking wet, makes me sweat and the rain. Going half insane, half insane. Wishing I could change all my mistakes, but y'all be half gone if all y'all had seen the things that I saw. Hallucinating from the alcohol, hoping I can stop my own fall. Gotta stand tall, overcome the sin. Walking down the dirt road, singing church hymns. Oh dear Lord, oh dear Lord. Well, I'm standing at the crossroads. I don't know where to go. I'm losing control. Trying not to sell my soul. I'm standing at the crossroads. I don't know where to go. I'm losing control. Trying not to sell my soul. I'm sitting back thinking about the memories. Now I don't know who's a friend of me. These people act like they can to me. Well, that's still a mystery. A mystery. Devil wants me to lose my relationship.